Okay, so welcome to our last session on the book of Judges. We'll be reading chapters 17 through 21. And last time we were speaking about Samson. Remember, Samson was also one of the judges. So now towards the end of the book, there's several interesting things, especially the story about the Levite and the concubine. I don't know if you read that. And just in case, Dr. Dina Dye has an excellent teaching just on that, on the concubine, the Levite and the concubine, and she relates it to Messiah and the bride. It's an excellent teaching, so you might want to look that up if you're interested. So I'll be going over that in her way of kind of explaining it. I don't have all the details, but at least give you an idea of how she understands it. Because some people... there was someone that used to come here that could not understand how God would allow something like that to happen, and so that kind of made her think that for some reason she just kind of couldn't understand God in that sense, and I think that made her kind of think. Yeah, so she said, but how can he do such a thing? Blah, blah. So in a way, she was judging God by what had happened. So, but we'll go over that in just a little bit. Okay, so if you go with me to chapter 17 of Judges, and it says, now there was a man of the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. Micah, or in Hebrew, is Micha. And Micha means who is like God, or who is like him. Okay, and it says in verse 2, he said to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver which were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse in my hearing, behold, the silver is with me, I took it. So apparently here's this lady, and her son is Micah. She had lost 1,100 pieces of silver. And he found them, and he was saying, you uttered a curse, because you don't know if somebody had stolen it or whatever, but I found them. So he brings the pieces of silver to her, and she says, blessed be my son by the Lord. He then returned the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother, and his mother said, I wholly dedicate the silver from my hand to the Lord for my son to make a graven image and a molten image. Now therefore I will return them to you. So she blesses her son. In other words, she overturns that first cursing. Okay, that curse that she had uttered, now it's made negative. It's canceled because she blesses her son for finding the money and bringing it to her. And she dedicates it to the Lord, Yahweh, but then she says, I'm going to use part of that silver to make an image. And with the silver, that image was going to be like you do, that gold, when you put gold on something. I don't know what you call that.
Overlay.
The gold overlay. So this one was going to be overlaid with silver. So the issue basically that we're going to be dealing with here in these chapters of Judges is the issue of idolatry. And remember that it mentions that this is in the area where the tribe of Ephraim is. So these people are from the tribe of Ephraim. And as you know, Ephraim was very geared towards idolatry. So here we have this lady who's dedicating this money to the Lord, but she's going to use it to make an idol, Verse 4, so when he returned the silver to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave them to the silversmith, who made them into a graven image and a molten image, and they were in the house of Micah. And the man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household idols, and consecrated one of his sons, that he might become his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. So not only do they make images, they decide who they're going to call priest. So this guy takes one of his sons and makes him a priest because he has a shrine in the house. So imagine, so when it says that in those days there was no king, that means there was no order. No one was overseeing what all the tribes were doing. Everybody was doing their own thing, and they thought it was okay. Oh, I'll make an image, and I'll make a shrine, and I'll call my son a priest, and we're fine doing exactly like Yahweh wanted. Verse 7. Now it says, there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite. So here's this guy who's from Judah, but then he's a Levite. So I'm assuming that, remember that every tribe had Levites living? So he probably lives within the area of the tribe. It's not that he's related in the sense that he's born in Judah, because if not, he could not be a Levite. If you're a Levite, it's because you're from the tribe of Levi. So, but he's within the family area where the tribe of Judah was. Verse 8, then the man departed from the city, from Bethlehem in Judah, to stay wherever he might find a place. And as he made his journey, he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. Micah said to him, where do you come from? And he said to him, I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to stay wherever I find a place. Micah then said to him, dwell with me and be a father and a priest to me, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, a suit of clothes, and your maintenance. So here Micah is saying, now because this is a true Levite, a true priest, so he says, well, I'll take this guy instead, so he can stay in my house and be my priest and bless me. So the Levite went in. The Levite agreed to live with the man, and the young man became to him like one of his sons. Verse 12, so Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, now I know that Yahweh will prosper me, seeing I have a Levite as priest. So now it's not his own son, it's a real Levite, a real priest. So he thinks, stay with me, and you'll be a blessing. And I know that I have found favor in the eyes of Yahweh because you have come and stayed with me. So the salary that he's going to pay the Levite is basically a salary that was given to the workers of that time period. So where he was getting a fair, let's say a fair price or salary for what he was going to do. Again, so you see the thing about idolatry, because remember that at this time, the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant were in Shiloh, okay? But this is in the area of Ephraim. So instead of going to Shiloh for a feast or whatever, they decide, I'll have my own little shrine. Now I have my own priest. I have my idols, so everything is perfect. Chapter 18. In those days there was no king of Israel. And in those days, the tribe of the Danites was seeking an inheritance for themselves to live in, for until that day, an inheritance had not been allotted to them as a possession among the tribes of Israel. Again, as if you've read, you know that it mentions several times that in those days, there was no king in the land of Israel. People were doing whatever they wanted. And now it goes speaking about the tribe of Dan. And again, remember that as you read, it's not always in chronological order. Okay, when you read, it's basically in an order to exalt Yahweh, exalt the king, or exalt something in favor of the Lord. So in this case, it's mentioning that the tribe of Dan still had not found a possession of their own. Verse 2, so the sons of Dan sent from their family 5 men out of their whole number, valiant men from Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to search it. And they said to them, go search the land. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. So it seems like everybody's going to the house of Micah. Maybe he's boasted that he has idols and he has a priest, and so everybody goes there. And so when they were near the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young man, the Levite. And they turned aside there and said to him, who brought you here? And what are you doing in this place? And what do you have here? And he said to them, thus and so has Micah done to me, and he has hired me, and I have become his priest. They said to him, inquire of God, please, that we may know whether our way on which we are going will be prosperous. The priest said to them, go in peace. Your way in which you are going has the Lord's approval. So because he's a Levite, they're asking him, okay, can you please ask of the Lord, of God, if what we're going to do will be favored and prospered. And he goes, oh yeah, you guys are fine. Don't worry about it. God is with you, blah, blah, blah. You know, And here they are, they're completely away from the tabernacle when you only inquired these things within the tabernacle, not outside of it. Verse 7, then the 5 men departed and came to Laish and saw the people who were in it living in security after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and secure, for there was no ruler humiliating them for anything in the land, that they were far from the Sidonians and had no dealings with anyone. So they find this place, this town, this community, and they're living safe and secure, and they're very quiet, and then, it's like a nice little town, and say, okay, so this is the one where we're going to take as possession. Verse 9, they said, verse 8, when they came back to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol, their brother said to them, what do you report? They said, arise and let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you sit still? Do not delay to go, to enter, to possess the land. When you enter, you will come to a secure people with a spacious land, for God has given it into your hand, a place where there is no lack of anything that is on the earth. So these guys go and take 600 men of the family of Dan, and they go to fight against Laish, and as they're fighting, they come again towards the towards that name was Micah. And verse 16, the 600 men armed with their weapons of war, who were of the sons of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. Now the 5 men who went to spy out the land went up and entered there, and took the graven image and the ephod and household idols and the molten image, while the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. When these went into Micah's house and took the graven image, the ephod and the household idols and the molten image, the priest said to them, what are you doing? They said to him, be silent, put your hand over your mouth, and come with us and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one man, or to be priest of a tribe and a family in Israel? The priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod and household idols and the graven image and went among the people. So basically they robbed Micah of all his idols and everything that he had, because he was convinced by the men of Dan, come with us, because now instead of being priest to one man, you're priest of a whole tribe of Israel. And he said, oh, that sounds good. So he went with them and took with him everything that belonged to Micah. Verse 21, then they turned and departed and put the little ones and the livestock and the valuables in front of them. When they had gone some distance from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house assembled and overtook the sons of Dan. They cried to the sons of Dan, who turned around and said to Micah, what is the matter with you that you have assembled together? He said, you have taken away my gods, which I made. Now doesn't that sound kind of like an oxymoron? You have taken my gods, which I made, and the priests, and have gone away, and what do I have besides? So how can you say to me, what is the matter with you? The sons of Dan said to him, do not let your voice be heard among us, or else fierce men will fall upon you, and you will lose your life with the lives of your household. So the sons of Dan went on their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. Then they took what Micah had made and the priests who had belonged to him, and came to Laish, to a people quiet and secure, and struck them with the edge of the sword, and they burned the city with fire. And there was no one to deliver them, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone, and it was in the valley which is near Beth Rehob. And they rebuilt the city and lived in it. They called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their father, who was born in Israel. However, the name of the city formerly was Laish. The sons of Dan set up for themselves the graven image, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh. He and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up for themselves Micah's graven image, which he had made all the time that the house of God was a child. So the tribe of Dan, with all these men, they go to this community and they slaughter everybody. And they take over that property, that piece of land which was, I'm assuming, pretty big, because it was for the whole tribe of Dan. And they called the city Dan. So basically, and not only that, did they take over that city, they also set up the idols that Micah had. So they did that even though Shiloh was where they were supposed to meet and worship the Lord, where the Ark of the Covenant was. So again, idolatry continues. It went from Ephraim through Micah, the man, through that Levite that went to Dan, and they brought those images and everything with them. Remember that idolatry has always been the biggest issue that the people of Israel have always had in terms of Yahweh. And not only Israel, I think everybody, all nations, that's the biggest thing. And again, people think that an idol is just to be, have an idolatry is just an image. But many things can become an idolatry. Today, I think that the idolatry is the internet. You know, I can't imagine, I mean, I've seen people that they lose their phone like for 10 seconds and they go ballistic. Where's my phone? La, la, la. Or if the internet's not working, you know, it's like life is ruined. So that because when something is priority in your life that is not God, that's an idolatry. So I think that technology this day, even though it's good for many things, it has also become an idol for people. Now, chapter 19 is where we have the story about the Levite and the concubine. Now, the way Dr. Dina Dye explains this is that it's a midrash. That this is a midrash. Okay, and remember that midrash is like a story where it's a teaching. Okay, because remember, drash is one of the letters from the Pardes, the 4 levels of studying the Torah, which is Peshat is the literal. The R stands for Remez, and Remez is the one that gives you a hint. And D is the drash, where it's like a discussion, a study, something to learn from. Okay, so let's go again. You have P for Peshat, which is reading the literal. Okay. The R is for Remez, which gives you a hint. The D is a drash, which is a discussion, storytelling to make it so it could be understood. And then the S is sod, which is the secrets, or going really, really deep into what you're reading. Okay, so those are the 4 levels that Jews or people that study the Torah study the Torah. Peshat, the P is for Peshat, which means literal, just reading it the way it is. Remez gives you a hint. It hints towards something when you're reading it. The drash is the discussion, the storytelling. Everyone is discussing the story. And the sod is going into the secrets of the Torah, into its deeper meanings. Okay, so this story about the Levite and the concubine, according to Dr. Dina Dye, is a midrash. It is a discussion to teach something. Something's going on to teach. Now, did this really happen? I don't know. It's possible, but it's if you read it, it's kind of morbid. What was happening? So let's see what we get from this. It says in chapter 19 of Judges, now it came about in those days when there was no king in Israel. Again, there's no order. No one is watching over them. That there was a certain Levite staying in the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim. Here again was Ephraim, who took a concubine for himself from Bethlehem in Judah. So I don't know if you're noticing, the thing is between Ephraim and Judah. Ephraim and Judah. Verse 2, but his concubine played the harlot against him. And she went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah and was there for a period of 4 months. Why 4 months? The thing about the number 4, so he has a concubine, and she decides to play idolatry, be an adulterous woman. She goes to harlotry. And she goes away from him for 4 months. Remember that 4 has to do with the flesh. Has to do with the flesh. Verse 3 of chapter 19. Then her husband arose and went after her to speak tenderly to her in order to bring her back, taking with him a servant and a pair of donkeys. Now, I don't know if that rings a bell to you, but when you're reading in Isaiah about Yahweh and the people of Israel, when he says, when you were young, a virgin, I found you in the desert, in the wilderness, you were dirty and unclean, I took you and I bathed you and I washed you and I spoke tenderly to your heart. So it kind of, at least for me, it reminded me of that. It says, so she brought him into her father's house, and when the girl's father saw him, he was glad to meet him. Verse 4, his father-in-law, the girl's father, detained him, and he remained with him 3 days. Remember that the number 3 is important. It has to do with God's plan. It has to do with the kingdom. So it says, so they ate and drank and lodged there. Now on the 4th day, they got up early in the morning, and he prepared to go. And the girl's father said to his son-in-law, sustain yourself with a piece of bread, and afterward you may go. So both of them sat down and ate and drank together. And the girl's father said to the man, please be willing to spend the night, and let your heart be merry. Then the man arose to go, but his father-in-law urged him, so that he spent the night there again. The 5th day, he arose to go early in the morning, and the girl's father said, please sustain yourself and wait until afternoon. So both of them ate. When the man arose to go along with his concubine and servant, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, behold, now the day has drawn to a close. Please spend the night. Lo, the day is coming to an end. Spend the night here, that your heart may be merry. You may arise early for your journey, so that you may go. So the husband of the lady, the concubine, who played the harlot, goes to her father's house. After 4 months, her husband, the Levite, decides to go back to her, to get her back. So he's visiting his father-in-law, and his father-in-law is very hospitable. He's telling him, he gives him food, he gives him lodging, and the Levite wants to go away. He says, no, stay another day. So they stay another day. He wants to go away. No, stay. So he's being very hospitable to him. Why? Because after all that his daughter has done, he's come back for her. So he's grateful. He sees that the guy, the Levite, he really loves her. And so he's treating him well, because he's hoping that now his daughter will be treated well. So that he goes back and forth, until it says, wait, these pages are so thin. It says in verse 10, but the man was not willing to spend the night, so he arose and departed and came to a place opposite Jebus. Now, Jebus in that time is what we know today as Jerusalem. And there were with him a pair of saddled donkeys, his concubine also with him. When they were near Jebus, the day was almost gone, and the servant said to his master, please come and let us turn aside into this city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it. However, his master said, which is the Levite, we will not turn aside into the city of the foreigners who are not of the sons of Israel, but we will go on as far as Gibeah. So he doesn't stay where the Jebusites live, because they're foreigners. So he thinks it's better to go and stay in Gibeah, which is part of the tribe of Israel, they're Israelites. Okay, so keep that in mind. He doesn't want to stay with foreigners, but he goes and stays with Israelites of Gibeah. Verse 30, he said to his son, come and let us approach one of these places in Gibeah, or passed along and went their way, and the sun set on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin. They turned aside to enter and lodge in Gibeah. When they entered, they sat down in the open square of the city, for no one took them into his house to spend the night. Remember that it was a tradition that if you were traveling and you were going to stay somewhere, you would go to the town square of the square of the city, the town center, and wait there to see if somebody would take you in and and offer you hospitality, because that was the tradition. So here they are. Here's the Levite, his concubine, with his servant, with his donkeys, and they're waiting, and everybody goes by, and nobody invites them to stay with them, because hospitality is a big thing in this culture. So, verse 16. Then behold, an old man was coming out of the field from his work at evening. Now the man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was staying in Gibeah, but the men of the place were Benjamites. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going? And where do you come from?" He said to him, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim. For I am from there, and I went to Bethlehem in Judah. But I am now going to my house, and no man will take me into his house. Yet there is both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and also bread and wine for me, your maidservant, and the young man who is with your servants. There is no lack of anything." In other words, he's saying, we have everything we need. We just need a place to stay overnight, and so we can continue our journey. So basically, he's telling to the man, you don't have to feed us. You don't have to give anything to the donkeys. All I just need a place to stay. Verse 20, the old man said, "Peace to you. Only let me take care of all your needs. However, do not spend the night in the open square." So he took him into his house and gave the donkeys fodder, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. Remember that washing the feet of the people that come in is part of the hospitality, and giving them to drink and to eat, and also to their animals. Now, while they were celebrating, behold, the men of the city, certain worthless fellows. Now, remember, these are Benjamites. He didn't want to go stay with foreigners because he wanted to stay with people, his own people. And it says, the men of the city, certain worthless fellows, surrounded the house, pounding the door, and they spoke to the owner of the house, the old man, saying, "Bring out the man who came into your house, that we may have relations with him." What does that sound like? The story of Lot. Okay, the story of Lot. Then the man, the owner of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my fellows, please do not act so wickedly. Since this man has come into my house, do not commit this act of folly." Again, hospitality was huge. And that meant that when someone came into your house, you were responsible for that individual and everything that individual had. So it was an honor to have visitors and to offer them hospitality. And the man says, "Here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. Please let me bring them out, that you may ravish them and do to them whatever you wish. But do not commit such an act of folly against this man." But the men would not listen to him. So this is almost like the same story as with Lot. So the man not only offers his own daughter, he offers the wife of the Levite. The Levite hasn't said anything. And remember that by offering his wife, the concubine, the wife is an extension of the husband. So instead of taking him, take the concubine. Okay? And it says, and another thing is that many places during that time, when strangers came in, because they were suspicious of strangers, or they want strangers living in their own little town or whatever, one of the things they would do to show dominance and authority, they would sodomize the visitors. That was part of the culture. I know for us it sounds terrible, but that's what they were. And again, remember that they're described as worthless fellows. So even though they were Benjamites, remember that there's no king in Israel, so everybody's doing whatever they want. Verse 25, but the men would not listen to him, so the man seized his concubine and brought her out to them. And they raped her and abused her all night until morning, then let her go at the approach of dawn. As the day began to dawn, the woman came and fell down at the doorway of the man's house where her master was until full daylight. Now, that's important. The thing about the doorpost. Why the doorpost?
Threshold covenant.
Because of threshold. It's a threshold and has to do with threshold covenant. Okay? So even though physically she's been abused, basically to the point that she dies, but she's trying to reach, and by touching the doorpost, still acknowledging the threshold covenant with her husband. So this is what happens. When her master rose in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to go on his way, then behold, his concubine was lying at the doorway or the threshold of the house with her hands on the threshold. He said to her, "Get up and let us go." But there was no answer. Then he placed her on the donkey, and the man arose and went to his home. Remember that going home is another way. Is the temple. Why? Because it's only in the house that you have protection. Okay, only in the house that you have protection. So by taking her with him, even though she's basically dead because she never responded to his words, still he takes her with him. Okay, why? Because she touched the threshold. There's covenant in spite of. The covenant still stands. Her body has been abused, but her spirit has not been abused. She's still in covenant with him. So he takes her. He brings her to the house. So in other words, the thing about what Dr. Dina Dye says about the Midrash is that because of covenant, your flesh can be destroyed, abused, whatever, but your spirit is still alive. That spirit still is clinging to that covenant. And where you find protection for your soul, for your spirit to go on living in spite of your flesh being tormented and abused and whatever, is the same as like the temple has to do with protection. Okay? So it says, when he entered his house, he took a knife and laid hold of his concubine and cut her in 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout the territory of Israel. All who saw it said, nothing like this has ever happened or been seen from the day when the sons of Israel came up from the land of Egypt to this day. Consider it and speak up. So what he does, I know for us sounds really horrible, but he, according to what Dr. Dye was saying, there's a reference in the Talmud. I was trying to find it, but I didn't have the whole reference to find it, but it kind of says, if you've been, if someone has done wrong to you, you have the right to ask for help, to ask for revenge, to have people come and come to your side to find revenge for what has happened. If there's no justice, if justice has not been done, you have the opportunity to ask for others to bring justice for what has happened. So by him taking his wife and cutting her into 12 pieces, it was a piece for each tribe. Remember, this is happening within the tribes of Israel. So he wasn't expecting that those men who are Benjamites to come and treat him the way they wanted to treat him, and also to treat his wife the way they did that. And so this is something horrible and wicked that's happening within the tribe of Benjamin. So now he's seeking for justice, and what he does is he takes his concubine, cuts her into pieces, and sends a piece to each of the tribes. There's an episode, I think it's in probably in the book of Samuel, where Saul does something similar, except he doesn't send out a human body. He takes an ox, he cuts into 12 pieces, and sends out a piece to every tribe as a request of those that are with me to, kind of like a plea to the other tribes to come with him to fight. So what he's doing, the Levite is doing, he's sending out these pieces of his wife as a plea to come with him, join him to get justice and revenge for what has happened to him. And it says, so the people see this in the tribes, they're like, no, nothing like this has ever happened. How can this possibly happen in Israel? So chapter 20, then all the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, came out, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. The chiefs of all the people, even of all the tribes of Israel, took their stand in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. Now the sons of Benjamin heard that the sons of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. And the sons of Israel said, tell us, how did this wickedness take place? So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, I came with my concubine to spend the night at Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. But the men of Gibeah rose up against me and surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me. Instead, they ravished my concubine so that she died. And I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces. Remember that a covenant is cutting in pieces an animal. It's part of the covenant, except that in this place, instead of an animal, it's a person. And sent her throughout the land of Israel inheritance, for they have committed a lewd and disgraceful act in Israel. Behold, all you sons of Israel, give your advice and counsel here. So he did this to bring attention to all the leaders of all the tribes, and they assembled 400,000 men. And they come to him, and the Levite explains what had happened. That's why he sent those pieces to come together, one man, to bring justice to the Levite. And it says, then all the people arose as one man, saying, not one of us will go to his tent, nor will any of us return to his house. But now this is the thing which we will do, Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot, and we will take 10 men out of 100 throughout the tribe of Israel, and 100 out of the 1,000 out of 10,000 to supply people, that when they come to Gibeah of Benjamin, they may punish them for all the disgraceful acts that they have committed in Israel. All the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united as one man. So here this revenge to bring justice unites all the tribes. Remember that up to this point, the tribes were doing their own thing, everybody. They were all not united, but they were doing their own thing. But this situation is great enough that they all come together as one man to defend the request of the Levite. Verse 12, then the tribes of Israel sent men through the entire tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this wickedness that has taken place among you? Now then deliver up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove this wickedness from Israel. But the sons of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the sons of Israel. So all the people are asking, give up the guys that did this, so justice can be done. But they don't want to give them up. Verse 14. The sons of Benjamin gathered from the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the sons of Israel. From the cities on that day, the sons of Benjamin were numbered, 26,000 men who drew the sword, beside the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were numbered 700 choice men. Out of all these people, 700 choice men were left-handed. Each one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. Now remember that left-handedness is contrary to, usually talk about the right hand. The right hand is authority, it's righteousness, is doing things the way you're supposed to. So if they're left-handed, that means that it's all unrighteousness and they're doing their own thing. Okay. So what we have, 26,000 men of Benjamin plus 700 from Gibeah get together to fight against the other tribes. Remember, they have 400,000 men. And it says, verse 17, then the men of Israel besides Benjamin were numbered, 400,000 men who draw the sword. All these were men of war. Now the sons of Israel arose, went up to Bethel, and inquired of God and said, who shall go up first for us to battle against the sons of Benjamin? Then the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. Now, the interesting thing is, they don't ask first, should we go and fight against Benjamin? They already decided they're going to go and fight against Benjamin. But still, they ask the Lord, who should go first? And he says, Judah. Remember that the issue has been between Ephraim and Judah all this time. Verse 19, so the sons of Israel arose in the morning and camped against Gibeah. The men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Israel arrayed for battle against him at Gibeah. Then the sons of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and felled to the ground on that day 22,000 men of Israel. But the people, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and arrayed for battle again in the place where they had arrayed themselves the first day. The sons of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and inquired the Lord, saying, shall we go again draw near for battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against him. So they go up a second day, and the same thing. The sons of Benjamin give a whipping to the other tribes. So by this time, the other tribes are like, Lord, what's going on? I mean, we go up against the Benjamites, and you had told us that we're going to win, and yet all this defeating. So the Lord says, go a third time. So they go up a third time. And it says, in verse 29, so Israel sent men in ambush around Gibeah. The sons of Israel went up against the sons of Benjamin on the third day and arrayed themselves against Gibeah as at other times. The sons of Benjamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city, and they began to strike and kill some of the people as at other times on the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah, and killed 30 men of Israel. The sons of Benjamin, they are struck down before us as at the first. But the sons of Israel said, let us flee, that we may draw them away from the city to the highways. So the sons of Benjamin are very confident. We've defeated them twice, and we already killed 30 men, so we're able to again beat them. So what the other soldiers do, what the other men do, is that they provide an ambush. They do an ambush against the Benjamites, and they draw them away from the city. Then all the men of Israel arose from their place and arrayed themselves at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel in ambush broke out of their place, even out of Mariah Geba. When 10,000 choice men from all Israel came against Gibeah, the battle became fierce. But Benjamin did not know that disaster was close to them. And the Lord struck Benjamin before Israel, so that the sons of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day, all who draw the sword. So the sons of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. When the men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they relied on the men in ambush whom they had set against Gibeah, the men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah. And so the thing is that the Israelites on this third day were able to slaughter basically all the men who had come out of Gibeah of Benjamin to fight against the other tribes. So basically, only it says that only 600 men were left of all the people that came out of Gibeah to fight against Israel. If you go to verse 46 of chapter 20, it says, so all of Benjamin who fell that day were 25,000 men who drew the sword. All these were valiant warriors. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. And they remained at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. Remember, 4 has to do with flesh. The men of Israel then turned back against the sons of Benjamin and struck them with the edge of the sword, both the entire city with the cattle and all that they found. They also set on fire all the cities which they found. So basically, all the other tribes destroyed the tribe of Benjamin. Only 600 men were left. So imagine, this fight is brothers against brothers. Because they're all brothers, they're all one. And it says, chapter 21, now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, saying, none of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin in marriage. So the people came to Bethel and sat there before God until evening, and lifted up their voices and wept bitterly. They said, why, O Lord God of Israel, has this come about in Israel, so that one tribe should be missing today in Israel? It came about the next day that the people arose early and built an altar there and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. Then the sons of Israel said, who is there among all the tribes of Israel who did not come up in the assembly to the Lord? Because remember that a lot of the tribes where they settled, there were still other nations living with them within the tribes. So now they're asking, who of all these people that came, who did not come? And it says, for they had taken a great oath concerning him who did not come up to the Lord at Mizpah, saying, he shall surely be put to death. And the sons of Israel were sorry for their brother Benjamin and said, one tribe is cut off from Israel today. What shall we do for wives for those who are left, since we have sworn by the Lord not to give them any of our daughters in marriage? So now they're lamenting that basically the whole tribe of Benjamin was wiped out, that only 600 men are left. Remember, those are the ones that are hiding in the cave. And they're saying, we had made an oath because of what Benjamin did, not to give our daughters to marry with them. So they're saying, if we're not giving them our daughters to marry with them, if they can't marry within Israel, then that means the tribe is gone. Because if there's no women to marry and to have children, that means that the whole tribe is completely gone. So they're crying and lamenting that such a thing would happen within Israel, that one of the tribes should be completely eliminated. So that's why they're asking who did not come up with them to fight against Benjamin. Verse 8. And they said, what one is there of the tribes of Israel who did not come up to the Lord at Mizpah? And behold, no one had come to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For when the people were numbered, behold, not one of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead was there. And the congregation sent 12,000 of the valiant warriors there and commanded them, saying, go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, with the women and the little ones. This is the thing that you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every man and every woman who has lain with a man. And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man by lying with him, and they brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. So what they did is, because they didn't come to fight against Benjamin, they had made an oath that whoever had not gone with them to fight against Benjamin would be killed. And they found out that the people that lived in Jabesh Gilead didn't go, so they slaughtered them because they had made that oath. And among them, they found only 400 young girls that were virgins. So they decided, these are the girls that we're going to give to what's left of Benjamin so they can continue procreating. Now it says, then the whole verse 13, then the whole congregation sent word and spoke to the sons of Benjamin who were at the rock of Rimmon, and proclaimed peace to them. Benjamin returned at that time, and they gave them the women whom they had kept alive from the women of Jabesh Gilead. Yet they were not enough for them. Because remember, there's 600 guys, and they found only 400 girls. And the people were sorry for Benjamin because the Lord had made a breach in the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the congregation said, what shall we do for wives for those who are left, since the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? They said, there must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, so that a tribe will not be blotted out from Israel. But we cannot give them wives of our daughters, for the sons of Israel had sworn, saying, cursed is he who gives a wife to Benjamin. Now you have to understand that every time they made an oath, it was serious, because an oath was always made in the name of their God, and in this case, in the name of Yahweh. And they cannot break an oath. So even though this situation has happened now with Benjamin, they say, we made an oath not to give Benjamin our daughters. So how they decided to make the situation help them was that in Shiloh, when people came to celebrate the feast, it says that the men of Benjamin would hide in the vineyards. And as the young girls came, because there was some dancing that was done during the feast, he said in verse 20, and they commanded the sons of Benjamin, saying, go and lie and wait in the vineyards and watch, and behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to take part in the dances, then you shall come out of the vineyards, and each of you shall catch his wife from the daughters of Shiloh and go to the land of Benjamin. It shall come about when fathers or their brothers come to complain to us, that we shall say to them, Give them to us voluntarily, because we did not take for each man of Benjamin a wife in battle, nor did you give them to them, else you would now be guilty. The sons of Benjamin did so, and took wives according to their number from those who danced, whom they carried away. And they went and returned to their inheritance, and rebuilt the cities and lived in them. The sons of Israel departed from there at that time, every man to his tribe and family, and each one of them went out from there to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. So the same theme goes on. The thing is that it was a point where brothers fought against each other, to the point that the tribe of Benjamin was almost completely eliminated. And after having only 600 of them left, they say, you know, we can't allow this to happen. We have to find a way so they're able to. I mean, I know there's a lot of killing, a lot of blood, a lot of slaughtering. But the thing is, you have to understand that Israel was in idolatry. So what the Dr. Adina Dye says is that this is a story of, it's a Midrash story, where she says that it has to do with Messiah and his bride. So Messiah is the Levite, and the concubine is the bride of Messiah. Okay. Now remember that the bride of Messiah, Israel, has always turned to idolatry, has always played the harlot. Remember, this is one of the complaints that Yahweh has against his people. You went out and played the harlot. Remember, harlotry is spiritual adultery. And the thing about the concubine holding on to the threshold of the door is because of threshold covenant. Now it's interesting that the Olah offering that was brought to the altar of Yahweh, usually it was cut into 12 pieces. So remember that the woman was cut into 12 pieces. And the 12 has to do with the tribes. So in other words, this is a teaching, it's a midrash. Probably this didn't really happen, but it's a way to teach, because of the book of Judges, what they're trying to take notice of is the idolatry of the people. Once they had no king, and everybody settled in their areas, even though they're supposed to be one unit as a people of Israel, everybody did their own thing in their own tribes. Like this Micah guy had his own idols, he had his own images, had his own priest, his own shrine. Dan then took all the idols and put a shrine and did the same thing. And so as they're going through, I think that the message about Judges is that once a judge died that was bringing justice and was bringing order and balance to all the tribes of Israel, everybody did whatever they wanted. So this represents exactly what we as a people have done. We go our own ways. We commit spiritual adultery. And so we go from being a bride to being a concubine to being a harlot. But because of covenant, Yeshua comes back and takes us. It's the story of Hosea and his wife. She goes out, becomes a harlot, and still he has to go after her and brings her to his house. He forgives us. So the same thing with Messiah. We go out into the world, we become a harlot, commit idolatry, spiritual adultery, but yet he still wants us. Because the Levite took his wife, even though she was dead. Okay? Our flesh has to die so our spirit and our soul can be attached back to Yeshua. And the dying of the flesh is painful. Right? Because when you're out of the house, once you're out of the house, you're out of the protection and the blessing of the Father. Because remember, the house represents the temple. So once you're out of the house and go into the world and become a harlot, you're out of the protection, out of the being under the wings of the Father in his house. And yet, Yeshua comes and takes you, puts you on his donkey, and takes you back home. Why? Because the flesh can be killed, the flesh can be abused, the flesh can be destroyed, but your spirit and your soul cannot. So that's what the Lord is after. So really the story of the Levite and the concubine, most likely this did not really happen in Israel, but it's a midrash, it's a story as a finale of what was going on through all this time, through all this period of Judges, that there was order, disorder, order, disorder. Every time a judge died, the people went again and did their own thing. They became rebellious. They committed idolatry. And yet the Lord is merciful, still so merciful that he takes us just as we are, brings us back to his house, and tries to reestablish the covenant. So with that we finish the book of Judges. And remember that next time when we meet, we'll be starting the book of the prophet Samuel, the first book of Samuel, and from there go on. So if there's any questions or comments, we'll take those right now.